Welcome to the Chorus Metadata Matters workshop number 2, Moving the Needle, addressing the challenges of providing quality metadata. I'm Howard Ratner, the Executive Director of Chorus. Today's workshop will run into 12:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and will also be recorded for later viewing. Today's event would not be possible without the generous sponsorship coming from AIP Publishing, Springer Nature, the American Physical Society, and STM. Today's workshop will be governed by the Chorus Code of Conduct, so we'll have a very positive experience for all participants. So please do not engage in harassment of any kind. Do not post anything that a reasonable person would consider offensive, abusive, or hate speech. Do not post anything obscene or sexually explicit. Do not impersonate people, and do not expose private information. Today's workshop is the second in a series. It is an effort to gather together like-minded people like yourselves to discuss some of the common problems with scholarly communications metadata. We will start today's workshop by hearing from some experts in this area. Each will give 5-minute opening statements, including some background into the relevant projects that they've been involved with. This will be followed by a whiteboard open discussion with all of you, and we want you to engage. So please either do so directly in the whiteboard or note your comments in the chat function, and we will do our very best to add your contributions from the chat. So Scott, Parth, Usha, Chelsea, and Liz have each been invited for their expertise on metadata and involvement specifically relating to improving metadata. So a little bit about Chorus. We are a not-for-profit community effort trying to reduce the burden of complying with open and public access mandates. We are creating a future where the output flowing from funded research is easily and permanently discoverable, accessible, and verifiable by anyone in the world. We aim to make open research work. That's one of our mantras. Our stakeholders are funders, institutions, publishers, service providers, and implicitly researchers and the public. We do this by following our 4 goals of helping our stakeholders enhance their OA compliance and improving their metadata quality, which is one of the reasons we're gathered today. We help drive data as a first-class citizen and connect our stakeholders to build trust. Specifically, we deliver dashboards and reports, and then we also monitor for open access on publisher sites, link to publishers, agency portals, and grants. We connect data sets to the content that we study, we participate in open research pilots, and we host webinars and meetings like today. So as we talk today, this will relate to the fact that Chorus is really driven by persistent identifiers. They're central to what we do. And as you can see here at the very top, publishers collect and send content DOIs and funder IDs to Crossref, and more recently, the Japan Link Center. We at Chorus then consume that information, and then using that, we check to see whether or not an article is archived for preservation at Clocks and or Portico, whether a preprint has been deposited in a repository, whether the article is appearing on an agency portal, whether there is public grant information from the agencies themselves or via Crossref, whether or not authors have ORCID ID records, whether there are research organization registry records for relevant organizations, and finally, whether there are relevant data sets to link to via the Scholix framework, which uses persistent identifiers found in DataCite and other sources. So before we kick off with our speakers, Tara is going to pop up a quick poll to get this warmed up a little bit. So if you can all answer this question, what are your feelings about AI's role in metadata quality? You could enter anything you'd like. I'll give us a few minutes and then Tara will display the results. While that's going on, I just want to welcome everybody. I know it's a 9/11 morning. For some of you, it's quite a somber day. Looks like answers are still coming in. All right, looks like they're slowing down. Just when you say that. All right, Tara, I think that's probably a good cutoff point.
Okay, is it sharing now?
I
Mark,
only saw my answer.
So I had stopped it and it's sharing now. So,
I'm just going to share my screen.
okay.
So this is what we're seeing. If you look at the cloud, obviously metadata is coming up. Mark, I don't know if you want to jump in here and if you want to spot anything in particular that you're seeing here.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. Okay, let me come on camera. Um, yeah, so I think there I see the elements of caution, but also hope and optimism. That maybe it's a path forward. I think we'll have a lot of opportunity to talk about both the good and the uh, risks with AI and how it can help us all solve this problem. It isn't, in my view, going to be the panacea, but it certainly can lead us, uh, down a better path, perhaps. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you wanted to highlight before we get started. Sorry, I'm just seeing everything at the same time as everyone else. So
Yeah, and me too, for that matter.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's keep these in mind, and we can keep these around when we have our discussion later to see if any of it is relevant. I will actually stop sharing for now because I want to switch back. So Mark, do you want to take us
Yep.
through your bit? Thanks.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Let me echo Howard's welcome and thanks for joining us in this workshop. I'm Mark Doyle. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the American Physical Society. I'm also a Chorus board member and a longtime chair of the Chorus Technical Working Group. So welcome. I'm really looking forward to having an engaging conversation here today. I'll be your moderator. But the real thing is really to hear from everybody and have everybody contribute. So really, as you listen to the speakers, please think of how this how you fit into this picture, how your organization fits into this picture, and think about how to contribute to the conversation. So we started off with a question around AI. It's kind of top of mind for a lot of different things, but really it's one part or one element of the larger ecosystem for which I think everybody represented here shares a responsibility for ensuring that we're taking good care of the ecosystem, keeping our garden weed free, and just making the best use of metadata. Um, in the world of AI, the need for attribution and trust and traceability is kind of a critical, somewhat ambiguous or ill-defined concept these days, which is where I think a lot of the notes of risk and caution in the poll came from. We're also concerned about overall quality and the maybe concern around what I would call AI glop. Maybe that's not so much metadata as content these days, but it's really important that we maintain the trust and quality of the system that we play in, because we're really around the scholarly record, and that should be our North Star. There's a lot of opportunity to optimize things, not only using AI, but also to optimize for AI to ensure that it is a good partner with us as we build out new products and tools or ways to conduct research, connect people together, or connect data to publications. So it can be really empowering. This workshop is the follow-on to part one, which took place in late April, called Metadata Gone Wrong, What to Fix and Why It Matters. Tara just put into the chat a link to the summary page for that. I encourage you after this workshop, not during the workshop, to take a look at it if you haven't. There's a lot of good things that were there. But we heard from Howard around some of the problematic areas that Chorus encounters when trying to work with the metadata in the ecosystem, especially around funder IDs, license metadata, ORCID IDs, affiliations, and grant IDs, and even more basic metadata like publications date, which you think would be really good. We also heard from Yvonne Campins from OA Switchboard about the need for accuracy and attribution, particularly so that the institutions and funders can do what's important for them and make content discoverable. One of her main points was about how doing it late in the process leads to a waste of time and money. And there's a lot of risk of false positives leading to inaccuracies and also false negatives leading to incompleteness. So those are all themes to keep in mind. We also heard from Ted Haberman, co-founder and CEO of Metadata Game Changers, who really talked about the importance of metadata to repositories and the need for continuous improvement strategies. And in particular, ways to measure and identify areas of improvement. And I think that's also an important theme as you're thinking about these things. How can we measure our progress and know that we're doing a good job as we work on the themes of this workshop? We also heard from John Chodaki from the University of California Curation Center Director from the California Digital Library, who introduced Comet, which is a community-led initiative to establish a curation model that facilitates a wide range of stakeholders to collectively enrich persistent identifier metadata. And finally, we heard from Mitchell Bakos, Director of Product Development and Solutions Architecture at the American Chemical Society. And he spoke about machine-readable solutions and a technical area called soft binding, which was a method of linking metadata and rights declarations to digital content without embedding them directly into the metadata. So that seeded the contents, the big takeaway, the context for the first workshop. The big takeaway from that workshop was the need to identify pathways and introduce solutions to fix errors or omissions upstream. And that's a key word, upstream, right? Again, going back to Yvonne's point about wasting time and money correcting things late in the process, and building the infrastructure to minimize the introduction of metadata errors going forward. And also, I just want to reiterate, keeping in mind the idea that creating metadata quality metrics and scores and methods to actually share and socialize those success stories that we have. So for this workshop, we decided that we would focus in 4 specific areas. Again, they are around that trust and attribution requirements that are present in the ecosystem today. So that's around authors and author identifiers, author and contributor affiliations and institutions, funding information, and references, which is about giving credit to where credit is due. So those are the 4 areas we'll be focusing on. We're looking to move the needle today. That's the key phrase, and that's the topic today of the workshop. And let me just say that I want to move on to the speakers, but please keep in mind this is meant to be an active discussion. And the other thing is there will be another poll at the end, which is that our ask for you during this workshop is to try and come away with at least one action item that you can take back to your job, your organization, your friends to advance the cause of improving metadata quality. There will be a quiz at the end. But that's really just the one question poll. So as you're listening to the speakers, engaging in the discussion, please have this in mind because we're really trying to be action oriented as an outcome of this workshop. And so, without further ado, I'd like to move on to the speakers. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to present. I'm going to hold questions until after all of the speakers are done, and then we'll go on to the next phase of our discussions, which will be an open discussion backed by whiteboard note-taking by Howard and also Tara Packer, a really important member of the chorus staff. So our first speaker is going to be Scott Dineen. He's the Senior Director of Publishing, Production, and Technology at Optica. He'll be talking a little bit about AI references, affiliation pain points for authors. Well, he's going to represent the publisher space. About half the registered attendees today are publishers. Um, we also have, we'll hear then from Parth Agrawal, who's the Associate Director for Machine Learning and AI at Cactus Communications. So a service vendor for many publishers. And he's going to be talking about document extraction, the complexities and duplication of metadata, and research integrity. And he represents providers, and we have another small set of participants today from that community. We'll also be hearing from Usha Biradar, who's the Assistant Director for AI Solutions and Products and Business Intelligence at Molecular Connections, a technical partner with Connections. And I'd like to thank Usha for stepping in relatively late. She's going to speak on behalf of Jignesh Bhatte, who's the founder and CEO of Molecular Connections, who sends his apologies for not being able to join us today. She'll be focusing on authors and references and also metadata extraction, matching and standardization and normalization. And then we're going to move on to another area, which is our libraries and institutions. We'll be hearing from Chelsea Dinsmore, who is the chair of Resource Description Services at the University of Florida Libraries. And she's going to be telling us about the institutional repository context, the importance of metadata, and teaching students about that importance of good metadata and good metadata use, and also highlighting some issues around authors and affiliations that affect the way the library tries to achieve its mission. And then finally, we're also going to hear from Liz Agee, information specialist at the United States Department of Energy, Office of Scientific and Technical Information. She represents the funders, which are also well represented in the participant list today and an important part of our ecosystem. She'll be talking about organization IDs, persistent identifiers, the metadata cleanup they do, and the enhancements that they have to add. So I'm going to move on now to the speakers. So we're going to start with Scott. So Howard, if you would, I guess, turn off this sharing since Scott does not have slides, and we can get started. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sorry. Somehow I was imagining my face filling the screen. I'm glad it's not. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. Yeah, I'm Scott from Optica. I'm glad to see Rosita, one of my colleagues, has joined. And I'm going to talk about a new issue we're seeing with references in Optica journals, something you're probably seeing as well. At the beginning of this year, we started seeing references coming in that were clearly AI generated. These were references that looked absolutely real and convincing because they were actual author names from the community and often real titles from papers, but the metadata was typically all mixed up. And there were some completely invented references, but they were very convincing. I mean, so convincing that these papers got right by the editors, right by the reviewers, right by a lot of the staff. And, you know, because references contribute so heavily to author reputation, journal reputation, and obviously readers' understanding of the work, we were very concerned. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and imagine some of you are facing the same thing. Oh, by the way, there were hallucinated DOIs all over the place too. So that was one way we were able to find these fake references. The references that were AI generated, once we found out that was the case, sometimes they indicated that there were other AI ethics problems with the papers. Sometimes the whole paper was clearly AI generated and even got through the editors and reviewers. We know that because it had all the telltale signs, the bulleted lists. We found one phrase I want to share with you, that the technique offered a rich tapestry of phenomena, a plethora of fascinating behaviors. So these are these kind of tortured phrases that we've never seen before. We always have non-native speakers writing in English, but we've never seen language like this before. A word about the ethics then, and then I'm going to talk about solutions, although my colleagues and the other speakers are going to talk in more detail about that. Obviously, in terms of the ethics, hallucinated fake references can, mislead the readers and pollute the literature. Other people might take those citations and use them, not having read the paper or following up. And I guess that brings up another point. The fact that people are going to reuse these fake references, it kind of shines a light on the practice, even without AI, of authors collecting references and putting them in their paper when they didn't read the sources. They're not sure if the sources are relevant, and the sources didn't inform the research. So I think that's an interesting aspect of looking at misuse of AI. In terms of solutions, what we're trying to do about it, first we have to find these things. And with journal references, we've had pretty good success rate, because during the production process, we kind of don't use what the author provided verbatim. We send the core metadata into Crossref. We get the reference back from Crossref along with the DOI. I think a lot of you probably do that. And if you don't get a DOI for a known journal, recent journal, it's a dead giveaway that something's wrong. And we can follow up on that. We're trying to understand why authors would do this in the first place and provide education. So we're able to talk to the authors and, kind of learn about what their thought process was. What else did I want to say about that? Well, in terms of IT, certainly you're going to hear from some of the other speakers about what you can do to try to identify these earlier in the process. Right now, we're not sending this data into Crossref until production. Ideally, you want to do it at submission. And I know a lot of publishers are parsing references at submission, providing links. So certainly that can be a big part of the solution. I had another topic to bring up, but I have my stopwatch running, and I'm right at 5 minutes. So Howard and Mark, I'll stop here. Thanks.
Okay, yes, thank you, Scott. Thank you for also being tuned into the time. I'm sure there'll be time during the discussion for you to introduce another point or topic. Howard, I've lost control of turning my camera on, but that's fine. So our next speaker is Parth from from Cactus. So without further ado, Parth, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome everyone to this session and workshop. Next slide. So primarily, I'm representing Cactus. So Cactus has been involved since nearly 2 decades in working with publishers, even researchers, on all things related, right from even editorial services to even of late AI products that help both researchers and publishers on various aspects. And what has been our core point of strength is the immense amount of data that we have been able to look at and even process throughout these years. So next slide. So the idea is that while there are a lot of aggregators, there are a lot of data sources that come in, especially the metadata. Uh, what we have been trying to do is collect it into a single data lake, which is our source of truth for building all these products, building different kinds of like technical checks or any kind of validations also. So at times when even researchers come in, they would also want to know about various aspects of their own metadata or their own publishing details as well. So while the numbers that you see on the screen, some of them may look odd, but the initial numbers which we started with were way higher. So like it's always important to note that if you look at raw data which is just used from the aggregators or anywhere, it is very heavily uh, duplicated, inconsistent, and actually there needs to be a lot of work at times just to make sure you are looking at the right statistics also. So like in terms of like even authors, while we still have like disambiguated authors as 32 million, I'm sure the active authors or even total researchers who have ever published in the world would be significantly less. So there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, but at the same time there are new and new ways of making sure that you are able to clean the data well. So next slide. So primarily, like we work a lot with not just aggregation of data, so Crossref, OpenAlex, but even we have certain partnerships with the publishers where we do get clean metadata. So what we are able to do is we are able to marry the inconsistencies across what may get stored in a preprint server versus Crossref versus a publisher. And we have seen lots of different cases where there are inconsistencies with matching. So at times it's very difficult to identify where the source of truth is, right? And eventually, like you would want to assume that it comes from the publisher, but at times even that may need a bit of a cleanup. So I'll try to cover two or three of these cases while we have encountered a lot of them. But since we wanted to touch base more on the document types and some inconsistencies in the author names and journal names, I would try to cover those from our experiences. So next slide. So in terms of like the doc types, like doc type is a very interesting metadata field, which you have if you have seen Crossref metadata list. So if you go through all the doc types, even for just one publisher, you will see that there are different types of doc types, and there is no formal limit on what it can be. Like JATS XML itself has 30 different doc types in its standard definition. So you can imagine, even if you are looking to just filter the data on just looking at research papers or even review articles for that matter, uh, you will still see that there may be some cases that get missed. So even a standard document has lots of different types. So it's very difficult to even quantify or classify whether this document is a single type. And so far, we have identified like 300 plus various doc types. And as an example, next slide. So if we just look at one publisher, if we took Elsevier as a publisher as a case to see what all doc types do they have. So like in just one publisher ecosystem, we are able to find 45 different doc types, and they range from like conferences to like just case report data to even something like a note removal or even a short survey, right? So it spans across various aspects of research, and all of this metadata, like all of this data comes into the central data lake, right? So at the end of the day, when you're collating, right, or even thinking about using these kind of data for research, if you're not selecting or aggregating the right type of documents also, it is very important to know what to use when, right? Especially if you're building any kind of simpler GenAI use cases, it is very important. Next slide. While doc types is one key area which is like fascinating, but that data inconsistencies are what makes at time it critical to be used. right? So author names, there are always different variations. There would be Parth A versus Parth Agrawal, or there would be Agrawal Parth, there would be A dot Parth. So, and at many times, we often get mails from the second authors, third authors, that hey, our name was not mentioned correctly or was not in the order. So it's always like the standardization is not there, and for different journals and different publishers, keeps on hopping around. So it's very difficult to truly achieve some sort of an author disambiguation. While it seems it's easy, but even these trivial things cause different problems. Next slide. And not just for with authors, even with
Hey, Parth, I'm just going to ask that you try and wrap up
Sure.
your last point. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so with journals also the same names happen. You can have the full names or the acronyms. Next slide. Primarily, I wanted to touch upon like if when we look at AI generation, right? We are now in the AI assistive era where we started off with just using AI blindly, but now people are truly understanding that what part of the workflow can they use it more effectively and in a stable manner as well. So we expect to see this growing. Next slide. And that is where like even for research integrity, uh, yeah, it's very important to have systems where you are adding human in the loop, right? And adding AI in the assistive manner even over there, which can just flag for certain checks. Next slide. So like when we started building this, and even there are lots of people doing work in this space, there are different types of checks that are coming up, and as we are getting more matured with using AI, you will see and expect these to also grow. Like I think Scott mentioned about tortured phrases, right? The list itself is growing to an insane level, so it's very interesting to see how the solutions to catch them also are growing. And one last thought, last slide. So while while we do talk about uh, AI also becoming better, but at the heart of it, if the data itself is garbage or is not great shape, the AI will also learn that eventually, right? And build more downstream applications just using that. So it's a boon and a bane that the system or the AI system will never reach that stage, but bane also because it's difficult to build if there is so much inconsistency in the data, right? So yeah, with that, I'll leave you with that thought that we still have a lot to do, but AI can be used effectively in certain manner.
Great. Thank you, Parth. So moving right along, we'll come back to those points during the discussion. So we're now going to hear from Usha from Molecular Connections. So take it away, Usha. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Usha Biradar, joining you today from Molecular Connections in the capacity of Assistant Director, AI Solutions, on behalf of our founder and CEO, Mr. Jignesh Bhatti. We will be presenting some of the new age metadata challenges that we are specifically facing with regards to our newest product, which is Publishing Engine, a publishing platform from Odyssey, a group company of Molecular Connections. We do deal with all kinds of metadata, but in the interest of time today, we'll be talking about authorships and referencing only. Next, please. The publishing community at large has seen an upward trend in terms of authorships, along with the number of publications themselves. Multiple independent studies and reports have shown us that we are witnessing anywhere between 3 to 6 average authors for a given manuscript or a published article, consistently across all domains. It's not about life sciences or social sciences or physics. It's consistent across domains. And this number spans from just 2000s to early 2020s. And according to the reports, the projected average by 2030 is about 8 authors per publication. And if we combine this with the rise in publications, we have a huge need and opportunity to maintain integrity by allowing authors to indicate their individual research contributions and recognizing authors as creators in their niche areas. Next, please. So with this rise in co-authors, we see a few developments, very unique developments. One would be recognition of first authors. Traditionally, it's a concept that you have published author order, but owing to the interdisciplinary nature, we are now seeing that authors come back to us saying more than one of us would like to be recognized as first authors. And one of the challenges is having a standard around the contributions. And we have as a part of the solution, we have adopted standards like credit taxonomy, an ISO standard that allows for indication of putting different areas of contributions along with the degree of what they've worked towards. Next, please. Another unique aspect is group authorship or the consortium authorship, which is largely a way of recognizing non-traditional contributors, citizen scientists, as a collective. Our product is an integrator of credit along with custom solution of allowing authors to indicate the order of authors and indicate group authors distinctly. Why do we feel this is important? This is extremely important in maintaining the integrity right at the upstream level, like somebody mentioned in the beginning. And on publishers' end, this has many applications as well and outreach possibilities. We can now pinpoint niche contributors for a domain because of all these indicators that we have upstream, instead of assuming that the first listed author is always the expert in that field and trying to reach out to him to review a paper with that journal for that domain. Next, please. And enabling this at the entry point allows this metadata to be translated well onto registries like Crossref instead of working backwards, which many of my other co-presenters have talked about, and trying to bridge the gap at a much later stage. We are also taking additional steps to ensure that we do not overburden our authors by asking for too many details, but accommodate all scenarios and make sure that we have metadata first for us to work on normalizing these. And when our community is ready and works towards the standard, we can get on with normalizing and standardizing those metadata. Next, please. Another metadata that has seen leaps and bounds of these new age problems is referencing. This is, again, as we all know, with the advent of AIs and the global nature of competition and research, one of the specific items that I would like to talk about today is self-citations. And there are many other such issues, but we'll focus on self-citations. And we as a company, in our experience from some of our other research integrity related products catering to all kinds of publisher society, mid-level and large publishers, have seen a rise of about 10 to 12% over the past few years. I'm talking about just 2 to 3 years here. Next, please. To discourage authors from breaching these integrity principles, every publisher has set a threshold of acceptance. But with these new restraints now comes another necessity, that we want to make sure authors are provided with the right tools to aid in their manuscript submission process and prompt them to adhere to integrity principles instead of making their time on the platform difficult. Some of these expectations specifically for reference metadata are allowing an automated way of adding additional metadata to their references like DOIs, funder identities, and the likes. Solutions that aid them in verifying the citations and prompt them if they have perhaps forgotten a year or forgotten a few other metadata. And as a part of our publishing engine and research integrity suite, we do offer multiple custom solutions. Next, please. With a perfect combination of what we call as advanced and bespoke AI/ML solutions, along with human in the loop and feedback integration, we have many models that we individually apply to authors' affiliation journal recognition. I can quote about 12 models that work in sync if need be as a way of architecting a solution for a very specific research integrity problem. It acts as a suite, basically. For instance, we do not depend on pattern recognition as a traditional solution, but we have AI agents that talk to each other and make sure we use the publication networks, we use publication subject areas, co-authors, their institutions, affiliations, and disaggregate authors. Same principles apply to the citation as a whole. No matter what the referencing format, no matter the missing elements, we have solutions to say, hey, looks like this reference is incomplete, or looks like 10 of your references are in Harvard style while one is in APA style. Would you want to take a look? So it's these little aids that we put in place to help ease the process and maintain the integrity. We also have similar work underway for affiliation data, which is a larger problem, but with inconsistencies like departments being mentioned instead of actual institutions, etc. Our current approach is concentrated towards using a crosswalk solution across different standards like ring roads, RORs, grids, and the likes. Next, please. In conclusion, what are we saying? What do these efforts mean to the community members? We believe that for researchers and contributors, it means having full control over their metadata, which leads to good author profiles as a community, accurate citation grounds, and precise search results, maintaining research integrity. For institutions, this also means a clear way to recognize and promote collaboration opportunities and monitor the research impact, again with a heavy focus on research integrity. And for the industry, this is paving way for upscaling content as well, enabling rediscovery and interdisciplinary discovery as our community grows and our boundaries are marred a little bit. Finally, I'd like to end this conversation by saying that in our experience, publishers are increasingly collaborating with scholarly institutions, creators, and authors on equal footing, using AI to simplify publishing process while ensuring that the ultimate control always remains with the human authors. This balanced approach is gaining widespread acceptance, and we are proud to have jumped on this as early adapters. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. We're going to pivot away from our vendor partners and move on to libraries, the librarian point of view, and we're going to hear from Chelsea from the University of Florida. Take it away, Chelsea.
Thank you. So next slide, please. The University of Florida Libraries joined the Chorus project with a really specific goal in mind, and that was to address the need for seamless access to a definitive profile of UF authored publications, but trying to get that without placing additional burden on members of our faculty. We felt the Chorus dashboard offered the potential to integrate with key institutional information management systems that facilitate research and scholarship management, sponsored programs and grants management, as well as faculty research and achievement reporting, and eventually institutional repositories. So we wanted to identify publications by UF authors and use that data to provided to assist with research funding compliance. We hoped to proactively reach out to authors with publication information in support of public access mandates and suggest, while they're at it, they submit allowable publications to the UFIR. That we could assess open access participation by UF authors beyond compliance was a bonus. Next slide, please. So the information available from Chorus is super helpful, but as a net consumer of the data, we have identified some challenges. This is the standard author affiliation report that one can request from the dashboard. This is our 2024 report for UF. And I wanted to show just two examples of how upstream data issues can make it challenging to use this data in an integrated way. I want to note only 30% of UF connected records in this report, or in our report overall, contain an ORCID ID. I didn't include that column in this screenshots I'm using because they're empty in both of these examples. So next slide. First, we have the case of Noah Hammerland. If we look at the chart, it is not clear if Dr. Hammerland is affiliated with UF. This is the affiliation, and our ROR ID fields are both empty. When we click on the DOI and go to the article itself, we find that Dr. Hammerland is in fact affiliated with UF, and we know that because the journal collected his affiliation when he submitted the document, the article. Because that information is readily available, we know the ROR ID should also be available for this DOI. We also note that none of these authors' ORCIDs are shown in their affiliation information on the article page, so we assume that information was not collected by the journal and didn't come over in the report. But a quick search shows that our professor does in fact have an ORCID ID, which tells us that that 30% ORCID ID number may be low overall. Next slide, please. So next we have the case of Ruby Patterson. Now, on the face of it, this looks like a good data. The 4 basic affiliation markers are present. However, when you go to the article, Dr. Patterson is not in fact affiliated with UF. He's affiliated with the University of Houston. Dr. Meyer, the 5th author, is the UF author on this paper. This highlights the point Usha made just a minute ago about only first authors coming through in the data Also, in this case, the journal did collect and show ORCID IDs for the other authors, but not for Dr. Meyer, who does have an ORCID ID. So these examples show that even when data is collected by the journals, it's not necessarily passed along to chorus. And we can't assume that the data is being presented accurately in this case. Next slide, please. So the libraries are working to train the next generation of scholars. We work with our graduate students, our undergraduate students, and our faculty to provide to train them to provide accurate information to the publishers, including we encourage them to sign up for and then provide their ORCID IDs. We offer regular trainings, including a 20-minute to impact series, and then also just to navigate the process of publishing. But the impactful improvements that are going to have to happen upstream. And in the first session of the series, Yvonne, as was quoted earlier, noted that the most effective and efficient way to fix metadata is to collect it correctly in the first place. Once the data reaches us, the consumer, there really isn't a mechanism for correction. So from the library's perspective, a concerted effort across publishers and repositories to collect the same information from all authors and then share that information with the dashboard will allow for extensible and useful data. When the consumer can't assume the data is correct, or when the collected data has empty fields, even when that data may exist further upstream, it reduces the consumer's ability to integrate the data into our systems or into the systems, and then otherwise develop strong use cases for it. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea. And our last speaker before we launch into our discussion is Liz Agee from OSTI. So please take it away, Liz.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and I appreciate being here. I'm Liz Agee from the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Scientific and Technical Information. I come from the Information Products and Services team. Next slide, please. So for those of you who don't know who we are, the Office of Scientific and Technical Information, or OSTI, our role in DOE is to collect, preserve, and disseminate all the results of DOE-funded research. So we collect that scientific and technical information produced by the national labs and our financial assistance awardees through our enterprise ingest system, eLink. And then we go forth and make those available to the public through our various search and discovery products like OSTI.gov and the OSTI.gov API. Clean and robust metadata is absolutely foundational to making those results discoverable and reusable by both people and machines. So to help enable that reuse and discoverability, OSTI has different metadata enhancement and enrichment processes in place that help us standardize and also augment the metadata that we receive. Next. But today I'm going to focus in on just one of the areas we've been working on, and that is metadata for organizations. So organizations obviously come in many different flavors, and that can include author affiliations, research organizations where the work was performed, and also the funding and sponsoring organizations. And with those come several different challenges that can include name variations, ever-evolving organizational hierarchies, and connecting to various identifiers that may be associated with those organizations. So on the right-hand side, you can see an example of this for one of our national labs. This is Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is where OSTI is located. And you can see that there are various abbreviated forms that we might receive in submission, including ORNL or Oak Ridge NL. Also, the lab sits within a nested hierarchy within DOE, and then within the lab itself, there are many different directorates or divisions. Each of these have a stake in understanding that the research associated with their different hierarchy. And finally, we have the organizational identifier space, which is ever evolving. We try to stay on top of that, but different identifiers have been used historically and are being used within different scholarly workflows. But the main point of this is that disambiguating the organizations and standardizing this metadata is critical for various activities, including attribution and impact analysis. Next. So at OSTI, we do have our enhancement and enrichment workflows, and we aim to tackle this in several different places. So at submission to our system, if that published work already has a DOI, we do try to pull in any metadata associated with that DOI through the Crossref and DataCite APIs. This not only reduces entry burden, but also captures that metadata that was collected upstream. Next, we go into our enhancement workflows, where we have a great team of information scientists that curate certain record types, and they help enhance the metadata associated with it. For organizations, that could be adding missing organization names and standardizing organization formats and ensuring that they're correct. The information science team also helps maintain our organization authorities internally, but also with PID organizations like ROAR. So that ensures that DOE organizational hierarchy and name provenance is captured within those persistent identifier databases. Finally, in the process, we have enrichment, and this is something that we're constantly evolving and working on. But we view enrichment of the metadata as leveraging those kind of external sources and automated workflows to help increase the value of the metadata. So we have an data engineering team at OSCE that has been working on various tools and workflows, including a new organization authority that pulls in information from various sources and an API tool to help reconcile organization names with those preferred formats and persistent identifiers. Next. So just showing an example of what that looks like, this is a snapshot of our new organization authority. So if we go back to our example of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, on the left-hand side, you can see all the various name variations we've captured over the years. We have quite the collection of them, but also on the right-hand side, you can see the various external identifiers that have been associated with the lab. So the point is to have a tool that will take a name from Oak Ridge National Laboratory delivered in any format and be able to connect it with all these different information. Next. And the reason we go to all of this effort is ultimately to enable the discovery and reuse of DOE-funded research. So the metadata that we enhance can be found on our product landing pages and through our product APIs. So for right now, for organizations, we're working to include connection to PIDs like ROAR IDs on our landing pages that will link out to those organizations' WOR pages, but we're also doing things like updating our OSCE.gov API to help include more granular metadata and also provenance and trust to help enable AI and machine applications across the research ecosystem. So obviously interest in AI and machine learning applications is growing, and we want to make sure that there is trusted and robust metadata to help maximize the outcomes of that. But with that, that's all I have. Thank you so much, and I look forward to discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, and also our other speakers. As you can tell, there's a lot to cover on this topic, so our speakers each had a lot to say. But hopefully that was got everybody thinking about how everything fits together and gives a pretty good picture of the end-to-end ecosystem that we're all working to improve. So as you can see, there's a whiteboard on the screen. We're not all going to interact with it, but Howard has some questions at the top there that I'll focus in on a second. But you know, a lot of the themes that we heard about through the speakers are about the ocean of information. The word lake was used, but I think it's more of an ocean. There were some integrity issues and ethics in there, especially from what Scott was talking about. We also heard about the importance of discoverability and not wanting to put burdens on our author and researcher community. Although, as I was listening and reflecting, you know, they are missing from this conversation. However, Chelsea was talking about how they are working and trying to do their part to train people early in all of this. So it's not a burden, but it becomes something that's expected. And finally, you know, everybody is kind of looking upstream, right? But that also kind of is interpreting things as a linear path where metadata only flows kind of in one direction, and then while enhancements and enrichment are taking place further downstream, are there ways to close the loop and feed that corrected metadata back into the system so that we can all benefit from it as well? So those are some of the themes I picked up on. I think I had said we were going to have time for speaker questions, but I think instead we'd like to move on directly to the conversation. So as you can see from the whiteboard here, the themes are kind of who, what, why, when, and how. And so we'd really just like to open up the floor and encourage people to sort of reflect and think about, hearing the kinds of problems and issues that are there. Who is ultimately responsible for this? Who can play a role in both providing metadata, but also verifying accuracy? Where should that live in the system? Who can be, how is responsibility actually implemented and assigned? What are our opportunities and what are the new tools that are coming about? We heard a lot about AI and the developments there, but are there other things that we should be looking at, or are there new, how to best use AI might be another way to phrase it. And so with that, I'm going to invite people to just please raise your hand. If you feel comfortable coming on camera, you may do so, but otherwise just unmute and we will, love to hear from you. Who is going to go first? You can also put questions in the chat if you're shy. All right, Liz, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. I will, at least for the author and contributor, about who is responsible for ensuring it's included. I will mention that there are a lot of, at least US public access policies that are now asking that if somebody has an ORCID ID or that kind of PID information that can help verify author and contributor information, that they should be including it when they publish. So if it's an available field for them to submit to. So I think that is one pathway to ensure that, you have that good metadata and disambiguation for authors, is to make it's a good responsibility on their part to include it, but also having fields on the publisher side to collect that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Sun Young.
Oh, that was perfect. Thank you. So I'm a data librarian at WashU Medicine, Becca Medical Library, and also create data set for institutional data repository called Digital Commons Data Becker. So metadata quality is of great interest, and we do actually manually curate, so highly improve the metadata quality by doing so, because researchers aren't that familiar. But I want to bring attention to there's a platform called Fairlist I recently run into and learned a lot about. And this one uses data visitation technology. But the one feature I got interested in is a QC functionality to improve metadata quality. But they use AI. So what it does is it connects to community-based ontology and standards to improve the existing metadata quality, and you don't actually take the data out of there. So in-place analysis, that's why they use data visitation and kind of improve the metadata quality of the existing data set. So I want to bring this to this group, see if they are aware of any other platforms that do that. It's one area we could actually use to improve metadata quality from the data perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Did we capture the name of that tool correctly? Fairlist, is that what it is? Oh, Fairly. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. I guess I'm not familiar with the term data visitation. So this is a tool that integrates directly into the system and enhances the metadata right there in the system. Is that what you meant by data visitation?
Yes. So actually, we published a paper, and the recently it's called Fairlist, by the way. Sorry, I mistyped it. There's a Z at the end. So this is a actually it's a RDA work group called AIDV. So artificial intelligence and data vegetation So we did have a Tiger-funded project called DV4IDA, Data Visitation for IDA, and Fairlist was used as a testing platform. So if you click on the Zenodo paper, it actually compares 3 different platforms: federated, data visitation, and centralized data visitation. So sensitivity of the data is very, very important. We have to guard the patient information, especially genomic data. So NIH recently updated their genomic data implementation policy. So they don't want people to download the data. They want to visit the data and then do the analysis. And there's a centralized data visitation like all of us, a biobank. But data visitation is probably more useful in the sense you don't really take the data to someplace else. You actually visit and do the analysis, the in-place analysis, so it's alive, more up-to-date information. It's safe. I mean, there are pros and cons. If you go to the paper, it does explain what are the pros and cons of each technology. And there's an Excel table embedded. If you go there, there are lists of platforms using the technology and more details about it. But Fairlist is one where I'm aware of using AI-based QC functionality to improve metadata quality of the data set.
Great. Well, thank you so much for bringing that forward. I have already learned something from the conversation here, and I hope others have. Matthew, thank you for your comment in the chat about RAID. Do you want to just give a little bit more context and description of that?
Sure. Yeah, so it's essentially it's an initiative that's come from Australia, and they have been using it to capture project IDs. So again, essentially, it's another sort of a PID, but in the examples that I've seen, you're able to start a project, you're able to assign grants to it using their PID, you're able to say who the people working on the project, you're able to say, well, this is my code, and there's its PID. If you have articles, etc., you could see their PIDs too. I guess coming from a publisher, I'm quite excited by the potential that in the future we could ask somebody who's starting a submission, oh, do you have a RAID for this project? They could give us that PID. We could then see all of the people who've been involved in that project, all the potential outputs, and it's kind of are these the right people for your publication? And we could be like, yes, 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 no, no, yes. Right. So it's taking away the need to like rekey everybody's name, everybody's institutions, everybody's ORCID every single time, and capturing all of the persistent identifiers in one place. So yeah, in conversations, I've been quite excited to see how that develops. And I saw Elizabeth commented that there's some people trying it in the US already. So it's exciting.
Great. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And so I just, do people, so these are broad tools and things, although RAID seems to be really good about looking at also the author contributor piece. And I think it will be a theme that might extend through a couple of other screens here on the whiteboard. So, but anything that anybody wants to add specifically about author contributors? One thing was the ethical piece in there, right? How to, from Scott, I was a little curious how the things that you discover actually go back into the peer review process from sort of that ethics point of view, and also if there was. I know you had a second topic that you wanted to mention and didn't have time for, but if it was related to author contributor, maybe this would be a good time to just expand.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It was related. One of the practical issues that we have with submission systems is that you have one contributor who may be submitting on behalf of 10 or more authors at different institutions. And we've been hearing for 20 years that that's the most laborious part of the process, is to add co-authors to a system, add the affiliations. And I know AI can help, and the vendors have talked about techniques, but we really worry about accuracy because there's a lot at stake. There's read and publish deals, and now there's vetting institutions against government entity lists. So I don't have a solution yet. I know some of the speakers are proposing them, but I think one key problem, and I'll stop after that, is that trying to get a submitting author to accurately add an ID the affiliations for all the co-authors is a really tough ask, and very unappealing to the submitting author to have to go through that process.
Yeah, thanks for raising that issue. It goes right to the burden on the authors, right? We say upstream, and ultimately it starts with them. You can't really go too much further upstream. That RAID idea, though, of being able to pull in data for things, maybe there's something there that could be leveraged. I think what we're going to do is keep moving through the different metadata topics here on the whiteboard. So we're going to move on to affiliations and institutions. I think that was a really important use case for a lot of different things. What we saw is that a lot of publishers, and this was highlighted by Howard during the first workshop, but also Chelsea, is that publishers aren't doing a complete job. There's been some pretty good evolution in adding affiliation identifiers. ROR is now established as a primary way, an open way of doing this, but of course there are other identifier systems. So who is best suited for being able to add that affiliation data and things? Or is that another burden that we have to put on the authors? Anybody? All right, I am not seeing hands go up, but Chelsea, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but I guess I'd like, from your perspective, where in the ecosystem would be helpful. From your presentation, I think it seemed like, or Laura, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that what we found is that, everything for an author researcher is tied to, how much time and that author journey as it's described, and were it to begin at that point, I've seen recently some conference proposals not being accepted until each of the authors has input their biographical information. And so for me, unless it's tied to tenure and promotion somehow, getting information from an author really has to depend on, the publisher requiring certain fields to be filled out upon submission of an article. And, that way, the author is completely invested in, this piece. But, the trouble is that for some types of publications, specifically a lot of science and medical publications, you have a lot of authors on that article. And so, but to me, that's really the only point in time where you really have the ability to get an author to provide you with the metadata that you need, to integrate into the system to have kind of a universe of publications.
Usha. Thank you, Laura. Usha.
Yes, please. I second Laura that from our experience as well, we've seen that incentivization helps. For instance, in some of our projects, of course, there are certain minimal mandatory fields that the author is supposed to enter, and they move through the submission system. They're done with their publications. And later on, we have few programs where we tell them that, hey, look, your newest publication has been cited. We send out a mail and then prompt them to complete their accounts and link their ORCID IDs, as an example. Another scenario is when we try to have the outreach, for instance, calling them back as reviewers in some invited papers. Even then, we try to incentivize saying, if you complete your profile, we can reach out to you more. And we've seen some success, but I guess the burden still lies with the authors. And some publishers have tried to make that mandatory, like having all the affiliations linked to an ROR ID or Ringgold ID for all the co-authors as well. But it is directly tied to the amount of time I spend on the submission portal as an author. So I don't think we have yet seen a balance between how do I make sure they're not discouraged versus how do I make sure I collect everything I need from the authors. So that's something that we have seen as well.
Yes, thank you. Young, we're going to need to move to another topic soon, but Young, do you have some additional comments?
Yeah, as I was creating data set, we ran into several, excuse me, affiliations that do not have a PID, like a ROR or in other type of things. So we had to actually create a custom metadata field to capture it in a text format. And I don't know if other, repository is doing that. How do we capture those institutions in a way?
Yeah, so I know. So my colleague Colin put a comment in the chat around RORs and things like that. And one of the things that we have to do is maintain our own internal database that is then supplemented and derived from ROR. But we do need the ability to do that. So, but I would ask, some other publishers on the call, what do you view as the single biggest barrier towards being able to collect the RORs and ultimately get them into Crossref so that they're feeding the rest of the ecosystem? Is it that the submission systems aren't supporting it yet, or Matthew?
Yeah, I guess I can just talk about my point of view from the publisher that we look at, but we already use a different database for assigning researchers to their affiliation, to their institution. And it's a kind of a system that we've had in place for a lot of years. It was used for subscriptions, identifying subscriptions and tying those to their institutions and their affiliations as well. So that's kind of a set of unique identifiers that we've had in place for a very long time. But then, as lots of other people are saying, the raw database is not complete yet. So there's still people who not all of the affiliations that we'd want are there. So then it's a question of, do we need to stop using the thing that we've been using for a long time to do something new, but then that's not yet fully fit for purpose. So it's part of a kind of like a choice about kind of updating our systems and processes. And it's not just a system that we use for authors, it's a system that we use to identify institutions across lots of different places. That it's not quite as simple as just, oh yeah, just use this system for collecting affiliations. It's tied into a whole load of other things and then queuing that for development and prioritization. So I know it's something that seems simple, but as always, it's more complicated than it looks.
Great, thank you. I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next whiteboard topic. I just also want to draw people's attention to Sung Young's additional comments about I'm not sure how to pronounce it, gated, which I guess is closely related to credit, but is really about declaring AI usage, which is a little outside of the topic today, but it's probably something of interest to pretty much everybody on the call. So let's keep going. Let's talk about funders, funder names, funder IDs. Of course, this is at the heart of a lot of what Chorus does. Anybody have anything that they would like to bring up around funder names? Liz highlighted some of the issues, and to the point where they're doing enrichment, as a main funder, getting data out of the ecosystem and enhancement. But are there barriers that publishers see that are preventing us from doing better in this regard? Or what is the missing kinds of ingredients in the ecosystem? Parth.
Yeah, so one thing that we have noticed is in the full text or the document itself, when someone mentions the funder name, that at times is different than what is logged in the crossref. So again, there is that mismatch. So even if you look at the document and try to find out who has funded these research, the metadata doesn't reflect back. Like Crossref also has that as an optional field. Not many time the funder information is present. So I think that standardization or some way to like make it possible so that at least the ones that are funded, and if you have like a funder ID, which is universal, like I like the idea of RAID, but then again, that whole missing piece of what is present in the document versus the metadata is something which at least makes it difficult to link or truly identify which funder aligns to which research.
Yes, thank you, Parth. And then I should mention Chorus is just completing at least an early phase of a collaboration with the Australian research funding organization CSIRO, which focused on really around resources and things. But part of that was a way for them to instruct their researchers on how to cite their facilities, the resources that were used, but based on DOIs and PIDs, so that it was easier to extract those kinds of things. Usually funder data is either extracted from free text in the acknowledgments or, again, a burden on the author. But what we're hearing both from Parth and Usha, I think, is that some of the service providers or vendors that publishers typically work with have some abilities to be able to help fill in those things. Let's see. Yeah, so award citation, Sarah, that's exactly the point. Did you want to come on, Mike, and say anything particular more about that?
Sure. So I work on the compliance side of research. And so I'm the one checking to make sure that they've deposited their data, deposited their publications into PubMed Central for the public access side of things. And so I'm kind of intimately familiar with all of these details, but sometimes we typically have a standard award ID, except for 2 years, we had a different award ID. And so sometimes the awardees try to follow that typical format. And so they kind of make up an award ID. I don't know why, because they have, an award letter that says, here's your award ID. And so for some reason they go back and they try to construct a different award ID. So it's all sorts of messed up. Or sometimes they just, in their publication, will say they have funding from, I'll just say it, the American Heart Association, and they don't cite the exact award, which is problematic, right? Because they have to, per their award agreement, cite their award, link their award to the publication. And so it's just a mess. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so there are lots of things that have been talked about. Funders providing APIs, funders providing clearer instructions. There's the carrot and the stick of these are requirements typically from funders, but yet there's still these gaps that we see. All right, some good ideas and things here. So let's just keeping an eye on the time and leaving some time at the end for kind of a wrap up. I think, Howard, let's go on to the last section, which is references. We certainly heard about a lot of the difficulties in references and the fact that papers are starting to have fictitious references, whether by accident or on purpose. But the importance of citation and credit are really critical to the whole scholarly enterprise. So what suggestions do people have here? We heard a lot about research integrity, the use of AI to check references, early checking from Scott. What other strategies are there, and maybe how do we close that loop for the author responsibility? All right. Let me. People are being a little shy or quiet on this topic. Let me ask some of the publishers on the call. Are you seeing the same kinds of issues that Scott is seeing, and are you taking actions already to do that? I will say at APS we are doing some research integrity, but we're probably not focused in enough on checking the actual references throughout the whole process. No publishers want to be brave and speak up. Scott, I'm curious with the references, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot a little bit. How does that flow back? If you do find a problem, how does that flow back into the peer review process and get back to, feedback to the authors? It sounded like you're trying to move it as early in the process as possible, but sometimes it seems to be taking place a little late in the process. As you said, referees and editors aren't even spotting the problems themselves.
We don't have programmatic checks until production, which is really too late. We should have that up front, and we're talking about it. But when we discover a paper that does clearly have bogus references, it involves a discussion with our staff, with our editor, and with whoever submitted the paper. And sometimes things come to light other than the manufactured references. And so we are getting some benefit out of this by having different types of discussions about why the person felt the need to, add references to a paper that had legitimate references already, but maybe not enough to feel that they were convincing. And also raised the question about what editors and reviewers, what they should be paying attention to. And finally, there's a deeper issue about a lot of references being added to papers where the source material really wasn't used appropriately to really be considered a reference. Sometimes people are just asked to include references that seem relevant. That's a judgment call, whether that's appropriate or not. But this issue is opening up discussions that we haven't had before about these sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you spent part of your time highlighting this issue and things. So this is one of those key things where moving it earlier in the process can be really helpful for sure. And we also heard from Cactus and Molecular Connections about the importance of research integrity checks and those early in the process. And there, I do think AI has a lot of promise for at least helping that. I forgot which speaker. There was another one about making sure the context of citations is correct as well. I've seen some early work on that from various things. I think we only have about 4 minutes left. So thank you all for the contributions and for attending and listening in today. As I said, there's a poll at the end, which I think I'm going to have Howard or Tara put up now, which is really, what is the action item that you would like to take away and do and action oriented. I also want to mention that while the poll goes up, that this was a relatively short time to engage around this issue. So we'd like to continue the conversation, and so we will be working to think about how people can continue to contribute their ideas and everything. As I tried to lay out at the beginning, this is an ecosystem and we all have shared responsibilities. The authors have responsibilities, but we have probably the least control over that. But still, how do we give them the enticements and the carrots to participate, but also the ease of use so that it isn't a burden and it just becomes part of their everyday process in a seamless way. So with that, Tara, would you like to put the poll up?
Yeah, I'm trying, Mark, and it will not launch,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right. Well, if we don't have the poll going, if people want to share in the chat, one thing that they are going to take a look at and whatever, I would encourage you to do that if you're feeling like sharing today. And then the other thing is, I guess, Howard, I'd like to turn it over back to you just for any closing comments or things that you might want to share. Howard?
Thanks, Mark. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and for the generous contributions from AIP, Publishing, Springer Nature, the American Physical Society, and STM. Also want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you for all your contributions. I thought it was really interesting talks. I also want to point out that Chorus will be having other events, so do check out our website. We've got a couple already scheduled for October and November, and so keep an eye out for all of that. We will be reaching out for the attendees today for you to continue to contribute your ideas, likely via some kind of Google document that we will send on to you, which will reflect the findings that we have shown up on the whiteboard today. Anything else that people wish to raise today before we close? Not hearing anyone. And Mark, thank you very much for doing a great job as the facilitator today. And everyone have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all our speakers and to Howard and Tara for bringing us together. Thank you. And let's try and keep the conversation going. Thank you all.
Everyone, bye.